Scene opens to York in the middle of April 1455. Ground has turned from snow to mud as the rain begins to usher in the new season. Farmers returning to their fields, and heavy boots marching to formation in the growing battalions outside the city walls. The sun sets and the rain settles on the soggy dirt roads. All seems quiet in the city of York. And Elined Versinghen, you have finally gotten your audience with Prince Ragna after having waited an entire week. You've returned to Castle York and been brought to her private chambers. Stepping in, the guards leave behind you and close the door behind them. Inside her chambers is a warm room with its own small fireplace, in fact, a low smoldering fire therein. This chamber is quite extravagant with bearskin rugs over wooden floors, impressive marble busts, a queen canopy bed with quite white curtains. And Prince Ragnar sits behind a large wooden table, kind of study, with a modest, deep berry blue frock. Jesper of Jomsburg, off to her right, standing with his arms behind his back, in a black leather tunic and the white rose of York embroidered at the breast. As you enter, Ragna quietly gestures for you to come close and sit across the table from her.
She will proceed and do so, doing her best to maintain that polite smile she usually has.
She waits a few moments after you sit. I'll be making appearance etiquette roll, standard difficulty. If you want to maintain this pose. Remain. Three successes. So you're able to remain composed and as controlled as you desire. I must apologize for the delay, Lady Versinghen. Troubles both abroad and at home have occupied much of my time. I have only just returned to the city but a few nights ago.
Oh, it is quite all right. I expected there to be some delay with being able to see you with the current tensions going on.
Precisely how familiar are you with these tensions?
Well, I am aware that Barbaros isn't the only issue we face right now. There are the growing rebels, of course, and there are the apparent holy warriors down south.
She narrows her eyes at that. I have not heard of these holy warriors.
You have not? Oh, right, that matter. Well, we were down in... Yes, Canterbury. While we were down in Canterbury, there was an issue. Apparently there were some holy men that were capturing and questioning individuals that dared to question about a certain Velvet merchant, yes, inquisitors, but they do not have the full support of the church. Not yet, at least.
Velvet merchant. This seems familiar. Perhaps we should speak on this another time. I have heard promising rumors of your leanings, my dear. I do hope they resemble the truth.
Of course, well, my coterie and I ended up going and attempting to talk Barbaros into peace talks, and that was not, well, fruitful in any way, shape, or form.
Let none say I did not extend my hand to Barbaros.
I know, and I am well aware. However, I did have my coterie members, minus Robert, of course, the other members and I have had a brief run-in with an individual by the name of Snow.
You say Sinwolf?
Yes.
Make a perception empathy roll, difficulty 8. Wow, 4 successes. You catch a very subtle change in her expression from the previously stoic and very serious. It flashes an instance of softness, perhaps even concern. It's only there, perhaps a fraction of a moment.
He said something rather concerning to us. He mentioned that magister that always seems to be on Rose's side, the Tremere, as he claims, is manipulating Barbaros. Barbaros will not listen to him will not listen to his brother anymore. And after some observations on more recent happenings, it does seem to fall into place. There seems to be no disagreements between the two of them. Unfortunately, I have no physical evidence to back this up, but it is concerning, and he mentioned that this Magister fellow was interested in causing conflict between the two of you.
Sinwolf wastes his time trying to counsel his brother. Whatever ill-advised counselor he may have selected for himself, Barbaros' choices are his own.
Of course.
Perhaps he has been influenced by some manipulating agent. But for me, at this moment in history, it is of little consequence. The actions have been made. They cannot be undone now. His rejection of parley was the last stroke.
Of course, but that this line was leading me to a certain thought. It was more, since he seems to be controlled or have a outside influence over himself, then that isn't very befitting. Not of his rank.
I'm inclined to agree.
It is more of a weakness than anything else. And I refuse to see that weakness have our society crumble.
A faint smile forms at the corner of her mouth as you say that. Then you are wise beyond your years, child. There are many out there who think they may reconstruct the wheel, so to speak. Build their perfect society. That it has not been tried millennia past behind them, and failed.
And they all speak of similar things in the beginning, and once things get settled, it almost never ends the same way the ideal begins.
Prudent of you to recognize that stability of society should be of paramount concern to all. And that is what I shall provide.
That is the same conclusion that I have come to.
Then there are events of which you should be aware of. Duke Richard has lost his influence in London thanks to the King's wife, an ally of Barbaros. A powerful conspiracy. Go ahead.
Can I make a politics roll to see if I know of any of the King's wife's allies? Because that's something I know out of character that I don't want meta about.
Oh, absolutely. Intelligence, politics, standard difficulty. Is that the most recent one? 4 successes?
Yes.
Okay. You're very well educated on the state of Cain politics right now. So you're aware that when Ragnar speaks of the king's wife, you already know that there is a conspiracy about King Henry VI. Margaret of Anjou, his wife, leads this conspiracy, this cohort of counselors that directs the government, as he is too feeble-minded to do himself. So you know that Edmund Beaufort is chief among them, and you're aware of the other significant actors at play.
Is this before or after she has her Scottish allies?
Before.
Alright. That is concerning.
This group must be weakened. Her leadership must be undermined. I received word just a night ago that the king held court at Westminster. A great council of nobles at the highest rank, along with the king himself, is to be held at Leicester soon. Perhaps as soon as spring's end. The Duke of York has gotten into his mind that he shall be tried for treason in absentia, and means for this council never to arrive. And her eyes narrow at that.
Huh. So, ambushed on the way there.
You may have noticed a few men outside the walls.
I have.
We march in less than a fortnight.
Very well. Though, I should bring one matter up. Last I heard, I was also to be the tactician for the Covenant army. As far as I'm concerned, I do not know if they have mustered their forces or not. I was shooed out of court after bringing up the information I've seen on Barbaros but haven't gained before finding out anything on.
Shooed from whose court?
Ambrose, it was in London. He did not particularly like the lack of physical evidence, which I do not blame him, but...
For all of his strength, his blood will always be his weakness. His tempers are growing more and more unreliable. And yet we do not have time to muster Covenant forces.
Of course.
The Covenant seeks peace, does it not?
Only a few members brought up the notion of peace, and we stated that we will attempt it. We attempted it, and it, in the last legs of it, fell on deaf ear.
Perhaps not. Peace may be achieved beyond words. It can be formed through steel.
Of course.
The Covenant seeks peace and has placed you as commander of their forces. It seems most reasonable to me that if you seek the most expedited peace, you would join my armies and lead my forces.
That is, in turn, what I came here to do.
A smile returns to her face, and she nods once.
And should their forces be mustered, it would be significantly easier for us to coordinate.
I do not anticipate this to be the only conflict going forward. As forces are mustered, they shall be assembled as necessary. In this moment, in this fortnight, I would have you at my side. However, there's another matter. She rises from her seat and slowly begins pacing off, looking down at the floor in thought. I am not blind to the betrayals unraveling about me both in my city and the Gauntlet. She paces past you further into the room. You have many choices in front of you, my dear. Do you support Wales or England? Your companions, your sire? Myself, the Covenant, these rebels. I've watched you for some time. Even beyond these walls, I have watched you. Know of your words and deeds. You are careful, you waste no words where none be said. You hold your opinion, you maintain etiquette. I would not have said as much of our plans in front of you if I did not already believe before you walked into this room that you were wise enough to seek the most rational choice, that you were to be trusted.
Aye, and this supporting England does seem to be the most rational choice, with all the other enemies lurking in the shadows, likely waiting for the right opportunity.
She turns to you from the center of the room, and you can see that in her hand she's holding what looks like an iron ringlet. You can see, actually, now that she's stand up, one is on her forearm, and one perhaps has been removed and is now in her hand. And she beckons you away from the desk.
Alright, she will do as instructed and move away from the desk.
Align yourself to me, and you shall always have my protection, Elined. But in this time of uncertainty, loyalty and trust come at a premium. If your words are true, I would have you swear an oath in blood.
Can I interpret if she's talking about some sort of blood magic ritual, or if she's trying to wants me to subject myself to blood bond or anything like that?
Sure. Intelligence, etiquette. Difficulty 5, it's not super arcane or anything. Alright, 4 successes. Do you have any specialties here?
Nope.
Okay. All the same, 4 successes is a lot. In this day and age, swearing an oath is the greatest promise one can make, and being an oath breaker is one of the worst crimes or status that you can have. But among kindred, it's even more magnified, and it's well known among vampire lords and princes that the first step, swearing the blood oath, through the first step of a blood bond, is a symbolic message of swearing fealty to the vampire lord. Often it is never repeated, and sometimes fades. Other times vassals engage in further blood bonding if they fail or if they prove disloyal. But oftentimes this is the etiquette of the era for cainites, especially cainites in status, taking on vampire vassals.
Alright, so it was what I was thinking then.
Yeah, it does not look like she's preparing anything occult, although she does hold this simple iron ringlet at her side.
Of course, and I do, indeed, speak the truth. she'll go along with it because backing out now would just be suicide.
All right. So she withdraws a letter opener and cuts at her palm. She does not get a goblet or make this any more refined. She simply holds her hand out expectantly.
Alright, she will take her hand and move close enough to drink.
You drink of the vitae from Ragna and taste an almost overwhelming nectar, a sweet and vibrant taste, like nothing you've ever had. It only lasts for a few moments before it's ripped from you. Ragna extends a hand to help you up.
She will take her hand and get to her feet.
And as you get to your feet, she extends the iron ringlet to you. This was given to me by someone very important, many centuries ago. I extend it to you now, as a reminder of our mutual promise.
Of course, and it is my honor to receive such a thing. It is... And she will take the little ringlet thing.
It's very simple. It's surprisingly cheap compared to everything else that she's wearing and has about her. It's also fairly foreign compared to Norman culture. Without needing to roll, you have enough academics and knowledge of other cultures in proximity to know that this is more of a tradition of the Northmen, of the Norse. The exchange of rings. Although nothing else about Ragnar, except perhaps her name, really strikes you as being Norse. I leave you to your night then. You shall be called upon soon enough.
And I will await that call. Can I tell if this is like an armband or anything?
Yeah, like I said, you're familiar with the Danes. This would be worn around the arm, so it's an incomplete circle that you would basically just clasp onto your forearm, and it rides up until it fits. It's a very simple item. You see she has one very much like it. Maybe identical.
Alright, she will place it on her arm and make a curtsy before she leaves, in order to show proper respect.
Ragnar nods to you, and you see that Jesper of Jomsburg has been watching this the entire time. You can see he smiles and nods to you also as you leave. And the scene fades as you depart. Meanwhile, We will catch up with Robert DeVere, also in York. Robert, the night has come for your expected meeting with Randall Penborough, Mr. Penborough. And Dorothy has come to find you, presumably somewhere in the castle of York, and she has on a very discreet-looking light gray cloak with which to blend in more easily. And much as in the past, she leads you back into the streets of York, away from the castle and through some of the less clean neighborhoods, the slums and the rack. The purpose and the certainty of her movement almost seems as though she's been reeled in or compelled towards some destination. And again, you're not exactly sure how you end up where you end up in the city, in these streets. But you do come to a familiar sight, a dead end of tall, overstacked buildings, creating these looming shadows of poor light. Do you say anything or react to anything during this time while you're being led away by Dorothy, or are you content to wait until the meeting has begun?
He'll keep silent till they get there.
Okay. So you reach this dead end, and again, Dorothy takes a few steps and quietly speaks the word under her breath. Revelare. You blink, and there's a door to a shack you are certain was not there before. And again, Dorothy leads you in. At this time, when you step in, you see Randall Penborough is there, although Anselmus is not. Randall is sitting at the same desk you first met them at, this small little round table. The inside is very simple and plain, little wooden shack you might expect to find adjoined to some lowly tavern of some kind. He nods calmly to you as you enter, and Dorothy lowers the hood of her light gray cloak, forcing a smile. Lord DeVere, we meet again.
Mr. Penborough, I hope things have been well.
He gives no reaction or acknowledgement. I have not seen you since last summer's end. Much has transpired.
Indeed. Perhaps it is best you fill me in.
Of course. Please, take a seat.
Robert will.
Dorothy as well joins you on the other side of this round table. Loss of your grandsire has catapulted our plans ahead far sooner than any of us had anticipated.
Indeed. And what has been brewing?
I suspect you know more than I do. If you're traveling to the princes, I imagine the Covenant is quite in an uproar over this.
Of the rivalry, yes.
Now our collective must be prepared to act upon this rivalry with perhaps less time than any of us hoped for.
That much is true. Time is short at the moment.
The previous summer, my superior, the Regent Cavanon, looked into this Magister Tredian who was spoken of previously. Are you aware of this?
Out of character, is Robert aware of this?
You're only aware... I don't think you were there when Thomas was meeting with Ragna and Lady Cavanon. I think it was just Thomas there when she was remarking on it, or lack of remark on it. But of course you know who Magister Tredian is. So we'll say no, you didn't know that she was actively investigating this, or was even aware.
This detail has escaped my notice.
Yes. Nearly escaped mine. This advisor to Prince Barbaros. I queried Lady Cavanon in passing on the investigation, in reference to Tredian Swift, and in referring to him, she made no remark upon his title or station. I shall not divest why this is of so great significance to those in House Tremere, but leads me to believe that either this Tredian Swift is of so great a rank among my house that he has no mundane title known to my regent, or, his eyes slowly reach yours, or he is not of House Tremere.
This brings up grave questions.
Dorothy looks concerned and kind of looking between the two of you. She looks back to Randall. My dearest Randall, does that not concern you more? That our would-be friend in Prince Barbaros may act with skewed influence of unknown source? In point of fact, it does not. In some ways, we are advantaged by this. Whomever this Tredian Swift is, his counsel has clearly helped shepherd Barbaros down the path of war with Ragna. War brings change. Change brings opportunity. An opportunity which we may all yet seize upon if we keep our wits about us. And his gaze falls back upon you, Robert.
The war, yes, but the outcome of this war may not be beneficial to Barbaros.
We do not necessarily need to worry ourselves with Barbaros or what becomes of his princedom. We need only concern ourselves that it opens vulnerability to Ragnar and York. If Barbaros is destroyed in the process or otherwise exiled, well, that is neither here nor there.
I can see your reasoning on this. But of course, a defeated Barbaros would leave an entrenched Ragna
One hopes this conflict will not be so one-sided that Ragnar's resources remain untouched. As I said, we must be agile in our response. Something may happen which gives us a chance. You may be best suited of all to recognize when this will occur.
True enough.
What progress have you made in finding the Volknot, which Anselmus described?
That remains to be seen. I have not had much time to interact with Ragna. That's why I'm here now. Begun planning, but nothing concrete on the mark as of yet.
I see. He looks down at the table in thought. The Einher jar, by Anselmus's description, would be a terrifying threat to Ragnar, if even half of the legends prove true. I recommend you continue to look for an opportunity there as well. But be cautious. The prince's actions of late suggest that she has been more reclusive than usual. I suspect her guard is up.
Without a doubt. She knows war is coming soon, and if there's a chance to strike, this would be one. She may even know that there are those plotting against her. Well, certainly Barbaros knows.
He nods. Where do your compatriots stand on this matter?
As far as I can tell, they seem intent on the downfall of Barbaros.
So they shall all back Prince Ragnar.
Perhaps not in the endgame, but as of now, yes.
Is Robert actively trying to deceive Randall?
It's not active deception because Thomas did indeed mention that he was going to gather forces in Scotland, I believe. Or was it Scotland?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, to bolster Ragnar's forces. That was not his end goal, but that was mentioned, and Elined certainly does seem to be at the choice of Ragnar. She seems to be the more known factor.
Regrettable. It seems the odds are not stacked in our favor this time.
Not at all.
But there is strength in guile, Lord de Vere. Low profile, patience. may prevail. Ragnar certainly will be confident with her great resources. I can expect something aggressive from her. Perhaps now is more your time to bide and wait, rather than attempt something daring.
I've considered that. If action is not made now, Barbaros's fate will no doubt be sealed. That I am convinced. But if his fate is not a concern, perhaps.
He nods.
And this Magister is Tridian. He is completely unknown to the Tremere Regent. His title, at least.
It seems so. She spoke not of a peer or colleague, but more detached. When speaking of this Tredian, I cannot speak to why my superiors would allow one to continue to claim membership to our house if it was not so. But there are many decisions my superiors make which are ill-advised or beyond my understanding.
Well, this is most important. If the Covenant could be convinced that Barbaros was indeed not under too much sway of Tridian.
Unfortunately, you will certainly not hear Lady Cavanaugh speak publicly on the record. Certainly, if this Tredian Swift has maintained his status as advisor and claimed his membership to our house for so long and not gone contested, she will not seek to create ripples. Else they would have been done long ago.
Yes, it seems most dangerous to me.
It may yet bring more danger upon you if you try to draw too much attention to it. For now, as I said, I advise caution. This Tredian Swift may be to our advantage. It is unclear.
You have to explain clearer, because I can only see bad things to perhaps even the Tremere as a clan if this is allowed to continue.
I cannot speak for House Tremere. I can speak only to the advancement of our own collective. As I said, this Magister seems to have aided Barbaros in pursuing more conflict with Ragnar, not less. That is what we desire. So whatever this influence is upon the Chester Prince, it is for the time being in line with our own goals. If that changes, perhaps we may reprioritize his revealing. Well, it seemed a bit risky to me. I'm inclined to do something about it now. Dorothy looks between the two of you again.
I believe the best we can do now is discover the Valknut.
She looks to you, nodding once. Have there been any other updates which must be shared here?
Yes. Ragna has a most accomplished spy. I have only a name, no description. Perhaps you have seen this cainite in passing. I speak, of course, of... Sorry, I'm trying to find the name again.
Sienna the Virgin?
That is probably it, though I do not see it on... Okay. Yes, Sienna the Virgin, that is correct.
I have heard that name. I've never seen this Sienna in person, though I can assure you, unless this spy master is also mastered in the occult, she will not have made her way here. I've seen to that personally. On that note, Lord de Veers, as you have shown your continued reliability and dedication to this group, I think it long overdue that you be given a means to return here of your own accord, and not at the behest of dear Lady Nicolier. And he withdraws from his cloak a small polished stone, and engraved upon it looks like a very simple carving of a leaf. He slides it across the table. Anybody hear me?
There you are.
Yep.
There we go. It was saying awaiting endpoint for the longest time.
Awaiting endpoint. What?
Yeah, sounds like
Discord problems.
Yeah, Discord
It's another
server
Tuesday.
problem.
Oh, okay. What was the last you heard?
I have heard that name.
And that was it.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Yes, I have heard that name. But I've never seen this Sienna personally. However, if this spy master is as skilled at finding those for Ragnar, I still would not be very concerned unless she was mastered in the art of thaumaturgy as well. This place is well protected, I assure you.
She will yet be a danger and hinder progress. After all, not every part of York is warded.
It is true. You should consider carefully what words you speak outside these walls. I shall do what I can to look into this Sienna.
It is a very, very closely guarded secret.
Indeed. In the meantime, I think it is long overdue that you be given access to this place for your service. And he withdraws from his cloak a small, polished stone with what looks like an engraving of a leaf upon the stone. He slides it across the table to you.
Robert will pick up the stone and examine it curiously before pocketing it. This will allow me to see through the ward, then.
Concentrating on this stone will direct you back to this area. Without it, this shack becomes but a memory. But it will not reveal itself unless you have allowed the stone to bring you to its terminus and speak the words of revelation. Revelare. Upon speaking that, at the stone's terminus, the door shall reveal itself. Should you need to share words, and know that even the Sienna will not hear of them, use it.
Very good.
If there is nothing else, I must return. I will begin my investigation of this Sienna.
I can think of little else at this time. If indeed that this magister is not of your clan.
Although he may not be of House Tremere, if he has continued this deception for as long as he has, he must be powerful in other ways. And he is not to be trifled with, one way or another. As I said, caution, Lord de Vere.
Of course. And caution always. I wish you a fine rest of your evening.
He bows his head to you and takes his nobleman's cap, places it back on his head, and rises from his seat to leave.
Robert will linger for a bit and speak with Dorothy.
The door closes behind you, leaving just the two of you in this warded shack. Are you so sure that we should not do anything about this Tredian? I don't know. I'm anxious about the idea of whoever this might be influencing Barbaros.
I am very much concerned by this. However, at the current time, the current course, if Barbaros does indeed fall to Ragna, I do not see much room for Tridian to maneuver out of a similar fate to Barbaros.
She looks unsure.
Do you think otherwise? Do you think she would use Tridian?
Isaiah can be creative in her wiles, and that is not always a good thing, especially not in the role which she has taken for the Covenant as the de facto interrogator. At times, her creativity frightens me.
Before growing so close, a chance to expose him would be difficult, to say the least.
I know not what we could do safely to expose him in any case. Well, that would be better or worse for us. I wish Anselmus was back. He said he would expect to return by the beginning of summer, though that is weeks off yet.
Who knows with what information could be found on Tridian? Maybe it could be painted to go towards Ragna. That would be most amusing indeed.
It is true, if you were able to convince perhaps the Covenant that this Tridian was a plant by Ragna to push him to war with her. I am certain that would bring many against her.
That is an available option.
Of course, I know not the first step you would take in approving that. Merely an idea.
Well, I have some time to work on whatever plots are available.
Jesper tells me that they mean to march very soon, in the next few weeks, perhaps sooner. Will you be going, do you expect?
Perhaps sticking by Ragna would be best at this moment. I don't expect to be contributing much, but yes, that may be the best place for me.
She nods. All this politicking and plotting has got me quite anxious. I think it right time that we find a way to rejuvenate ourselves. And she smiles, grinning even.
Oh, most certainly. You have a favorite spot in mind?
Several. And her grin widens as she rises to lead you away.
Robert will go with.
Alright. She leads you away from this warded shack, returning back in the direction of the castle of York. As the two of you make your way off, the scene will fade. We will transition back to Scotland. Message. Thomas Chamberlain and Cormac and Thomas. You are still in Scotland. It is still mid-April 1455. And Thomas, you had a bit of a run-in trying to feed before you were spared perhaps a much worse scene when Camden MacDougall came to send the guards away. The two of you returned to Edinburgh Castle after she spared you this Silence of the Blood misstep, and she began to regale you of the Black Dinner, a grim but true historical event where 15 years ago, in 1440, a man by the name of William Crichton, the then Lord Chancellor for the King James of Scotland, was still a minor. This Lord Chancellor invited two noble boys to dinner at Castle Edinburgh, the 6th Earl of Douglas and his younger brother, both of them just children. They were brought to dinner and entertained, but when the food was served, the head of a black bull was put in front of the young Earl of Douglas. Before he could react to the confusion, both he and his brother were dragged out of the room screaming. They were given a mock trial and then beheaded. The cainites of Clan Campbell are thought to have been behind, or at least facilitating, of this dishonoring of hospitality, the slaughter of children, even as the Douglases are well disliked. It is believed one cainite of Clan Campbell may still live somewhere in England, out of the reach of the Scottish families, the cainites. Camden finishes her story, her history lesson, commenting that Prince Malcolm eagerly seeks ways to hunt this last Campbell down without drawing Covenant forces into Scotland. You are returned back to Castle Edinburgh.
Does give one some interesting thoughts to ponder.
As I said, if you're needing to eat, just ask. And she smiles and winks at you.
I won't say I'm not of a thirst.
I'll find someone for you.
Preferably someone with trade. Well, I am what I am.
She smirks and nods, turning to depart down the hallway as you've re-entered this main great hall of the castle. What has Cormac been doing during this time?
After he got done feeding, he would have returned to the castle himself. Not being able to find Thomas on the street.
Let's say you enter just as Thomas is departed from Camden. So you enter the Great Hall and see that Thomas is not far off, actually.
So he's within sight then?
Yes.
And Cormac will approach, looking concerned. What the hell happened to you? Couldn't find you out there.
A misstep that may have been fortuitous.
A misstep.
I got caught playing with my food.
Cormac actually grins at that. I'm not going to tell you what I'm thinking because, well, you remember what happened to me not too long ago.
Wasn't quite that serious, but shouting happened, and someone did happen to get struck with a rock rather hard.
A rock?
It's not important. What is important is there might be room to negotiate a trade of services.
Do go on.
It seems there was a slight. You saw the people hanging as we came up.
I did. You're talking about the Campbell situation.
Indeed. It seems Malcolm is hunting one last Campbell cainite.
Really now?
It might be that certain parties would be willing to assist in tracking this individual down and bringing him to justice in return for aid in other matters.
I don't even know all the details, and I was thinking the same thing.
Whether or not it need be just the two of us, I think it'd be better if we had more men, but barring that, I'm game if you are.
More than game. We have to get that old buzzard to want to talk to us.
Of course, could also be that Camden planted that as a way of getting something out of us to prove our willingness to cooperate.
Could be, but would it matter anyway?
If it works, it works.
The only problem we have is where to start. If the prince is looking and can't find this Campbell, what makes you think we can?
We pick up where he's left off. the stones he hasn't turned over yet.
And how exactly do we find out which stones he's turned?
Well, we could just ask.
Just like that, eh?
If I've learned anything about these Scots since arriving, it's they don't like beating around the bush, gilding the lily. Better to be direct.
And if he asks why we're interested in helping him with this, which he will,
We tell him exactly why.
good faith payment.
A demonstration of willingness.
How late is it in the night?
It's very late.
I doubt we'll be able to see him on short notice now. Perhaps on the morrow.
I was thinking precisely that. It's unlikely he'll entertain another audience with us this evening at all, even if there were hours left. He's hungry, you see. Tom will grin.
For a moment there, I was worried he was going to eat us. Speaking of hungry, were you able to sate yourself?
Well, no. We were interrupted.
Do you need me to help you find some food?
Actually, Camden offered hospitality in that regard. Though I'm
Did
not
she
sure
now?
where she's got off to.
Do you even know who this Camden is?
Camden McDougal. I would presume either of the same brood or the brood of Malcolm McDougal.
Is that right? Maybe even of the same mortal blood. Wouldn't that be something?
Doesn't necessarily mean closely related, but I wouldn't be shocked if they're of the same lineage.
They do play things strangely in Scotland, don't they? I just as soon cut off my right arm than embrace someone, even a distant cousin from my own clan.
Now, don't judge too harshly. It's not exactly the kind of place that is given towards large population centers. You make do with what one has.
I grew up in the south of Ireland, my friend, not exactly a bustling metropolis.
But did your sire raise you there?
I suppose you have a point.
When pickings are slim, you harden yourself. You make do with starvation rations and stretch out the blood as far as you can. You husband your herd. You ensure its health and longevity, and you defend it ferociously against anyone who threatens it.
Are you a scholar of the country nobility, Thomas?
No, it just makes sense. It's not very much different from managing a business. It's different resources, but same concept.
It's about this time that you see the athletic figure, long chestnut brown hair, and the bands of light leather armor as Camden approaches again. No one's with her. She's alone right now. She looks over to you, Thomas. I sent up a couple up to your room. Good and drunk.
Appreciated. I'll make sure they survive.
She nods. Then she looks over to Cormac. And I trust you were able to get around.
More than amply. I quite like your little slice of heaven here.
She kind of smirks at
You
that.
know what they say about the luck of the Irish.
That, my friend, is a myth. Just like fairies and leprechauns.
You might change your opinion of our little slice of heaven here if you spend enough time. Plenty of blood to be spilled.
It seems you can't avoid that these nights anywhere you go.
It's getting late. I'm sure I'll see you around tomorrow night.
Aye. I look forward to it.
She nods to each of you and then turns back, heading off in a different hallway. Is there anything else the two of you want to do in the remaining time of the night, of which there is not much?
Go and feed from the gifts given.
Nothing for Cormac. He'll return to his chambers.
Okay. Thomas, when you get to the chambers that you're able to find, with the help of staff and also Gautier comes out a couple times, you find that there are a couple young women in little more than simple white frocks who are obviously very drunk, and they just look excited when you enter, and very easy to feed on.
Are we sharing a chamber, or...?
No, you have a chamber, and Cormac has a chamber, and Gautier has a chamber. You're all separate. that they're all very close in proximity.
Tom will leave the door open perhaps a little bit longer than he needs to, so that the sound of giggling young women can filter into the hall for Cormac's benefit.
It certainly draws Gautier's attention, poking around to watch.
Cormac chooses to ignore Thomas's nightly frolic. After all, he's at the real thing.
McDougal hospitality. And he'll go in and sate his need.
Alright, how much taken from each?
2 from each.
Alright,
Make sure they're...
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I'm going to make sure they are good and out of it.
Yeah, the combination of being fed upon and the ale of which they've clearly had much of tonight, it's pretty easy to put them out. And I don't think you were hungry enough to warrant a frenzy check.
I don't think so.
Alright. So you're able to feed and eventually slumber. The day passes beyond your knowledge. By the time you wake up, Thomas, you see the 2 girls are gone, and despite how much you inadvertently drank last night, the room seems to be in a bit better order than you recall. It's certainly more put together than the girls left it. Perhaps staff have come in, or someone else has come in to clean it while you laid torpid. But you go about and get yourself put together and enter the hallway. Cormac, you as well are able to arise and get your belongings in order. When you enter the same hallway of this kind of wing of the castle that's must be for guests. And after you enter, you see that Thomas as well enters the hallway, and the 2 of you are back together. Gautier is still asleep. What does Thomas mean to do with this next night? Did you lose me again?
No, we're still here. I'm pondering.
Okay.
Not knowing his way around too very well. Tom's going to be relatively careful about which halls he goes down, but he is going to see if he can't track down Camden again. And he'll make mention of this to Cormac.
What does Cormac mean to do tonight?
He has no other plan than trying to suss out what's going on with this McDougal feud, so he'll join Thomas.
Okay. So making your way through the halls of Castle Edinburgh, you eventually come across not the Great Hall, but another one of these upper areas. You hear movement and the sound of chatter. You recognize the voices. You hear Malcolm, and you also recognize the sound of Camden. This isn't a room you've been in before, although it doesn't look like it's guarded or secure. Do you enter?
It's an upper chamber?
Yeah, so you're up in the castle, not down at the base by the Great Hall or anything. You're up kind of where you think other rooms would be, or maybe other studies. So it's one of the various rooms in the middle of the castle, and you can see the door is wide open, and you hear the familiar voices of some of these cainites you met previously.
Tom will give a quizzical glance at Cormac.
After you.
Almost as if waiting for permission. Tom doesn't miss a beat after. And he will rap at the door to announce their entrance. Just so if any conversation is going on, they don't accidentally step in the middle.
It sounded like they were not having a very lengthy discussion, more just making comments in Scott Gaelic. And they both stop and turn, and as you enter the room, you can see there are many supplies being prepared here. And a quick glance at what seems to be prepared, it looks like supplies for travel and perhaps warfare. You see several quivers full of arrows being stuffed, and swords and axes being closed up in boxes, rations, supplies for tents. Malcolm turns to you. What?
I wondered if I might make an offer.
Make it fast, lad. He turns back to putting stuff away.
I understand you're hunting the last of the Campbells that betrayed your clan.
He stops. Camden looks between the two of you.
We thought we might lend a hand in that regard.
And how's that?
Well, we're asking for your aid down south. The least we can do is offer our aid up here. We just need to know where you've last looked, and we'll pick up from there.
He looks over to Camden suspiciously before looking back to you. Maybe you haven't noticed, laddie. They've been quite successful hunting Campbells.
Aye.
We did see your prizes in the square.
Let's say I took you up on this offer. You're going south, going back into England. What are you gonna do? Find this Campbell, cut the head off. You think that English cainites down there could let you do that?
If he's gone south, they probably won't. But I didn't expect this to be a bloodless coup.
His jaw shifts as though in thought. He looks back over to Cormac. Was Cormac about to say something?
No, he's just watching quietly, thoughtfully. He nods this affirmation in the prince's direction.
Well, lad, I can't say it wouldn't hurt your chances.
I have no idea what you just said.
I can't say it would hurt your chances.
No. Blood will have to be spilt. But enough of that's happened already. If you want him brought back for justice that you mete out, well, that might prove a bit more of a challenge. Traveling with a cainite is already difficult enough. Traveling with one under bond, well...
I would settle further ahead. I would prefer the whole thing.
Good enough for me.
Alive if possible. Dead if no other choice. Understood.
And that is not all I need to offer Scotland support.
Cards on the table. I like it.
It's certainly more than that Anselmus has offered. He goes back to packing. In any case, I'll be going away for a few weeks.
Tom looks around at the room. You and a few friends.
Aye. The Black Douglases. We're going to wipe them out. Should be a good fight.
If I didn't know better, I'd say that sounds like an invitation.
He looks back over to you. Make a perception empathy roll, standard difficulty. Two successes. He's not smiling, but he's not angry either. You haven't had many times to engage this man, but slowly you're starting to get what passes for approval in this man's face, and you can see some look of optimism when you offer that, even in his stony gaze. I don't know how much you care about Scotland, but wiping out these Black Douglases would go a long way to stabilizing our kingdom.
We share the same tiny island, sir. The least I can do is help to stabilize all of it.
He nods. Then get your things. We're leaving tonight.
Tom nods a bit and looks at Cormac.
Cormac is grinning. Go ahead.
I was done.
He looks actually to relish the idea of getting into a scrap. Not that he goes looking for fights, but if there's one that needs doing. I have one request to make of you, my lord.
What's that, Irishman?
That my man stay here safely until my return, with access to all the hospitality you can provide him.
What is he, some kind of puff?
A lawyer.
He's not a fighter, sir. In England, there's a whole class of people who exist only for the challenge of the mind, not the sword.
Fine. He has hospitality here.
You are kind and gracious, my lord.
I
I'll
am
gather
neither.
my things.
He interrupts you.
Oh, sorry.
That's it. He just says, I'm neither, and he returns to packing.
That done, Cormac is ready to go pack.
Tom as well.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say he's going to stop, of course, by Gautier's room to tell him what's happening. If he insists on going, he won't try to stop him, but I doubt he will.
Alright, you wake Gautier from his slumber. He relays to you that he spent much of the day exploring the castle and learning of the history of Scotland. So he's been up most of the day and explains more obviously why he's so exhausted now. And he wishes you all the best and is very grateful for the hospitality you've provided for him here, intent on doing more study and perhaps even writing of some of the history that's not been recorded here.
Then Cormac will offer him a gift. A couple points of his blood to get him through until his return.
He gladly accepts. It's almost difficult to pull him off, although he's getting stronger as a ghoul. He's still nowhere near strong enough to resist you. And so with maybe more effort than you'd expect from this young scholar, you pry yourself from him, and he looks almost like a scared and sad animal in that moment, just before he regains his composure and elegance.
Cormac does not allow himself to feel disgusted. He'll give him a warm parting grin and then depart.
Alright. So the two of you set about getting your belongings in order so that you can follow Malcolm and the McDougalls on their march against the Black Douglases. And at that, I think we will pause here since we're close to the hour, and we'll come back in 15.
All right.
Cool. Okay. We shall return. So back in York, Robert DeVere and Elined and Robert, you have a couple weeks of downtime, so there is some space to perhaps plan or otherwise prepare for what's ahead. Robert, you and Dorothy are able to find some time in more than a few places around the Castle of York, and leaving York over to the port over on some boats to relieve some stress. You may regain a point of willpower, as Dorothy is very good at relieving tension and spending some time just feeding and enjoying someone's company who, now that you both share a unique bond, is more comfort than you've had in a long time. It reminds you of your time with your family. So that does restore some of your mental reserves. Is there anything else in particular, Robert, that you would like to do in the next couple weeks, as you do see that, true to the description, it does seem like this force is mobilizing to move fairly soon?
Has Ragna been completely avoiding him?
She has not been avoiding you, but she has not sought you out. She seems busy otherwise, but she hasn't barred you from entrance or anything.
Alright, couple of weeks to get things done. Where to start?
You climb into her room through the window.
Has her chamber been left unlocked?
Roll a 1d10. No, you are not so lucky. On top of it being locked regularly, it's watched not at the door, but by guards down the hall with view of the door.
That makes things troublesome.
You want some time to think about what you want to do?
Sure.
Okay. Elined, you know that you have about a fortnight before Ragna leaves with the army moving with the Duke of York, as well as Salisbury and his son, Warwick.
Aye, that she does. She intends to study up on the location of the field of battle and try to create some sort of viable plan out.
Problem is, you don't know what the field of battle will be. You just know that you're marching south, purportedly to intercept the king and his counselors before they reach the summit for this council to convict the Duke of treason. So you're not exactly sure where this is going to happen yet.
Alright, then if she has the opportunity, she'll ask purely based on coming up with possible tactics for it.
Make an intelligence academics, roll difficulty 8.
Alright. Does tactics apply for the specialty?
Absolutely. So 2 successes. So you have to extrapolate a lot on how many men you're having and how many they're going to move at roughly what pace, where they might get to, and it's all a lot of what ifs. But ultimately, you deduce that there are many places it can't be, so there's only a few places it can be where this is going to inevitably take place. So you narrow it down, and you think you have an idea of at least the rough geography of that part of England, so you begin to construct a few scenarios that would be applicable in that kind of environment. Of course, much of this is subject to change. Much can change between now and then, but with what you know and what you think is likely to happen, you start devising a plan. Are you involving Jesper in this at all?
If he would like to be a part of it, if he has the free time.
Now that you're more or less in the know, Jesper seems a lot more willing to divulge information and speak frankly about plans and weaknesses even of the army and of their movements, the good and the bad, and so he's very eager to speak with you about these ideas, and he's actually quite impressed at your ability to infer so much based on information that is available but difficult to put together in so abstract a way for a prediction like this. And so you definitely impress him with this. He has little he can add in the moment. He initially would have said it was impossible to say how do you plan for a battle when you're 200 miles away without knowing. But seeing what you put together makes him think it's more possible than he thought.
Outside of coming up with a plan and well, she already knows that the forces are well trained already, considering what she saw at the battlefield. So, if there is any spare time left, she would likely, if there are any texts in the library on that specific type of terrain, she would like to at least read on it. It's a big stretch, and I don't expect it to be there, but...
Not really. There's nothing of substance. I mean, there's books that discuss some of the creation of some of the settlements and towns, which peripherally describe some of the terrain, but really nothing that you couldn't have figured out on your own.
Alright. With that there, she will likely, when she's not planning, oversee the training of the force. Or to some degree that she is allowed, at least.
Thanks to Jesper, and likely at the direction of Ragna, you're given a surprising amount of authority over these men, and initially it's difficult to convince some of them that this peasant woman is going to be commanding them. But through Jesper's force of will and his presence, and through a display of your obvious knowledge, anyone who was laughing by the end is taking notes and looking with surprise and interest at what you have to say.
Should I make a roll to try to improve them at all, or are they pretty much like the ones that were in the sparring circle?
I'll say your earlier roll still stands. It's not been very long since then. But you do know that at least when you come closer to battle, organizing these men and coming up with a plan holding that status will be easier now. Alright, was there anything else you wanted to try to do during this time?
Nope.
Okay. And back to Robert.
Okay. It's kind of limited if Ragna, at the least, is very busy. Dorothy is cut off from Ragna, so he'll probably... Maybe he'll get closer to... Has Lydia been by Ragna's side this whole time?
For the most part, she's either outside her chambers or following not far behind. You've never heard Lydia say a word, now that you think about it.
Interesting. Meh. There's probably not much of an option there for Robert.
Given your attention, you note that Ragna does seem to be busy, but much of her time seems to be disappearing with the Duke. You see them speaking often in the hallways, especially when they're alone, leaving to upper levels of the Castle of York, which is much more restricted, except to Elined, which you now have a lot more access to.
Interesting. And does the servant ever bring food during this time, or?
At night, it continues to be this one servant. They have a regular night servant, you think. Most nights it's the same one. Food is occasionally brought. It's very seldom, and when it is, it's much earlier in the evening, just within the hour or two after you've woken, and then usually not again. That's when this man is the busiest.
Ever when the two, Ragna and the Duke, are together?
Sorry?
Does this ever occur when Ragna and the Duke are together?
Yes, it does. When they're together, sometimes you'll see Ragna depart and then this person comes up. It seems to be both.
Huh.
You think it's just some night attendant seeking to the needs of the Duke?
Robert is very curious what happens. Can probably guess, but... when he gets a he'll find an opportunity to be near the servant and perhaps use a power of the blood here.
All right. What would you like to use?
When the servant is done bringing something to the Duke, and it's obvious the Duke and Ragnar are together, he will attempt to invade the mind of the servant.
Interesting. And to clarify, this is after the servant returns back downstairs.
Yes.
On a night when you know that Ragnar has been upstairs with the Duke.
Correct.
Okay. Let me refresh my knowledge of Invade the Mind. Oh yeah, this one. So I'll have you roll your intelligence subterfuge. Your difficulty will be 3. Well, actually, before that, let's back up. You just need to catch this servant when he's alone, when no other guards are looking, and basically trap him, right? You're not doing this in front of people, I imagine.
As far as I know, he doesn't even need to be subtle about it. Like, there's no indication he's even doing anything. As far as I can tell.
Okay. So literally when he steps back down to the second level from this upper restricted area, you just catch him in the middle of the hallway and invade his mind?
Just walk past him, yeah.
Alright, this is going to require attention. You can't just kind of pass by, so you'll have to stop him and you'll be standing there too. But that's what you want to do?
So how long would you say this would have to be in the open, just like staring at a man?
It depends on what you want to do. If you want to implant many thoughts and get pretty involved in it, you could be standing there maybe 30 seconds. If you just want to figure out what he was just thinking about, maybe 3 seconds.
Okay, is there any way to at least increase the chances that this is done subtly and not like cornering this man and having a direct face that this man could mention?
Sure. Give me a wits stealth, standard difficulty. Three successes on being sneaky. Alright. You've spent a lot of time in this castle just watching this man go back and forth. You've learned his routine inadvertently, and you know when he comes back down from the Duke, when he's bringing plates down, he has to go down into this kitchen area where he's basically stationary, faced away from everything, and is just putting plates away and cleaning up, and there's really no one else in the area. And so you find a spot near the kitchen where when he comes down, you follow him. And while he's standing there kind of bent over, putting plates away and cleaning them and cleaning up the area, cleaning up after the Duke, basically, you have this opportunity where he's really not noticed you at all, and he's not noticed by anyone else. You could feed on this man if you wanted, but you have a very good opportunity to invade his mind.
Then the invasion is what will happen.
Alright. Intelligence subterfuge, difficulty 3. 5 successes. Because his willpower is not very good, whatever he thinks, because of this, he thinks will be of his own thoughts. You can probe even deep thoughts or lost memories, since you succeeded at 5. So this man's mind is fully invaded. What do you wish to do?
Well, he'll subtly implant thoughts of what were the Duke and Ragna, or the woman matching Ragna's description, doing recently, and definitely trying to pull as much information from that as he can.
Alright. So focusing on this man, you start to get flashes of memory, sounds and sights. You actually visualize yourself walking into this very nice large chamber, very spacious and well appointed, and you're starting to walk in, but then you stop as you hear the sounds of coitus, of intimacy. But you can't help yourself, so you peer around and you do see a beautiful and pale woman. She seems to be laying back with the Duke between her legs. You know you have a job to do, but you don't want to interfere. So you take the plate and all the food you had, and you decide to set it down just on the inside of the door and very quietly make your way out without disturbing them and leaving the food behind. Hopefully you won't be reprimanded for that later.
Scanning deeper, I'm sure this man's eyes lingered. And if they didn't, Robert will definitely implant the thought that they should. Does he recall a sign? A mark? From the brief glimpse he had.
He saw about half of Ragna, the left half, much of her fully exposed. And on her body, he did not see anything which you were describing. You note that this Ragna seems a bit more lively. It's still pale, but with your years, you imagine perhaps she's quickened her vitae to make herself more lively for the Duke's taste. And yet you don't see upon her pale flesh any of these markings. Of course, you can only see the left half of her.
And this is definitely a start. Next, he'll see if the servant knows what times the Duke is not in the upstairs when he comes down.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? What do you want to know?
When the Duke leaves the upper level.
The Duke very seldom leaves the upper level during the night when this man is on duty. He's either sleeping, having sex, or he's having a very late night meal with his mistress. There's really no purpose for the Duke to get up out of bed and leave his chamber in the middle of the night, after all. Unless perhaps there was an emergency. But this man does not recall any emergencies which required the Duke to do such a thing.
How long has this man been a servant of the Duke?
Almost a year.
And who are the Duke's highest ranking officers? Does this man know?
This man knows that the Earl of Salisbury and the Earl of Warwick, whom both are named Richard Neville, of the Neville family, they are his greatest supporters, the Duke's greatest supporters. And actually, one is related by marriage to the Duke's wife, who was a Neville. So they could be considered his highest officers in that they command armies, they lead men, they have vast wealth, holdings, and military strength.
And for, I guess the final and deep piece of memory, does the servant know of the relationship between these two men?
Just give me one moment. The Earl of Salisbury is the brother of Richard's wife, and Salisbury's son, the Earl of Warwick, would then be something like his nephew-in-law. They have a very strong alliance. That's something you know as Robert more than what this servant knows, although he is kind of clean the same.
Okay. Could you repeat the relation between Warwick? Earl of Warwick?
So Richard, the Duke of York, is married to Cecily Neville. Cecily Neville is the sister of the Earl of Salisbury, and Salisbury is the father of Warwick.
Earl of Warwick. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so the Earl of Salisbury and Earl of Warwick, both Nevilles, are his greatest allies, most powerful allies.
Okay. Robert is done here with the servant. His next focus will be these two earls, then.
And did you say you're leaving an idea for the servant to try and peek more?
He is going to suggest to the man that if he gets an opportunity to witness the full body of Ragna, that he should draw a picture.
Certainly it would be risky, but it can't be helped. He is tantalized at the idea. She is gorgeous, and this is perhaps the greatest adventure he may ever have in this life. He thinks this is a good idea, to see the full body of this gorgeous mistress, and then draw her, so that he will always know. Yes. He nods to himself. This is a good idea I have.
Robert can't help but grin as he leaves after doing this work.
He finishes up his work and he turns around and is almost startled by you. What? Sorry, sir. He kind of straightens himself out and continues moving on.
Robert just gives a polite smile as he begins to leave.
Alright. Having successfully implanted this lecherous thought into the man's mind, what will Robert do next?
Well, next he'll figure out where these two earls are stationed, where they spend most of their time.
Given how much time you've spent in this castle just spying, and even before tonight, learning the routines, everything, you know both Earls, Salisbury and Warwick, are somewhere up there on that second level. Obviously not in the same room, but they must be somewhere up there. You've seen them go up with their retinue, and retinue leaves behind. They don't get quite the same attention, but you know that they're at least housed up there. No servants come to them middle of the night, unfortunately.
And how often does Elined go to the upper level?
It's a question for Elined.
I assume they'd be doing their planning up there, since it's a more secure location.
During the day, almost certainly.
So these two officers at least keep their merriment only to the upper levels. They never come down.
Just a reminder, they're not just officers, they're earls, they're landed nobles.
Oh, yeah, I meant earls, but yeah.
Yeah, they seem to sleep pretty well throughout the night. They don't go up nearly as often as Richard does. It seems like whatever business they take care of during the day. And they may be in the dining hall at the very beginning of the evening, perhaps having late meals down there, late dinners, or sharing some wine. But it's very difficult to get close to those private meals. And usually you think those happen upstairs as well, except on an infrequent occasion. So they're a little bit more reclusive in some ways.
This can't be the only servant that goes up there. Has he noticed anyone else? Perhaps one to clean the chamber pots?
Sure, there's another... It's actually a woman who goes up, and you think that might be precisely what she does. She doesn't really... You never see her with food. You think that each of these servants must have assigned tasks about where they go and where they don't go, what they do and what they don't do. God forbid they break those rules, or they lose their jobs, or worse. And so, yeah, you think you find one of these women. You happen to see her once or twice coming down with pots of foul-smelling liquid. While you think about what to do with that, Elined, I would say by this point you've definitely taken notice that Robert's spending a lot of time on this second level, in the middle of the castle. How does Elined react to that?
It is certainly interesting that he's staying down there instead.
You know that he does not have the same access, really no one does, that you have been granted to get to the upper levels of the castle where actual dukes and earls are sleeping. So you're more the exception than he is.
Fair enough. Though she wouldn't keep him entirely... Well, she wouldn't entirely ignore him. She would talk with him from time to... or attempt to, at the very least.
Robert is very willing to speak and be pleasant, offhandedly lamenting not being up there where all the action is.
Oh, well, you know what times like this bring. It has a certain air of caution.
Yes. Still, you must be doing all sort of tactical planning.
That is what I've known for. And I do believe that is the reason that I told you we were coming here.
Absolutely, but I would like to see a genius at work.
If that's the case, I do believe there's that board, type of board game I left here a while back, though its exact location I am certain of now.
Are you proposing we play?
You said you wanted to see my mind at work in tactical matters, did you not?
Well, yes, I did.
Though
Well.
it might be a bit unfair against you, so if you wanted someone to help you, I certainly wouldn't object.
Well, now, who would be proper competition? Do you think Jasper would have much of a chance?
Oh, I tried that back when I first made it. He didn't have any interest.
Ah, I see. Perhaps one of the noblemen. Have they taken an interest in games?
I'm uncertain. I haven't truly talked to them. I have more been planning.
Ah, you do not interact at all up there then.
No, I am not up there for social time.
Well, I would like to give it a shot. Perhaps something could rub off.
Alright, I assume that the game she left is not in the same location it once was.
Actually, it is. Although the pieces are a bit moved around, you think perhaps someone's been using it, but it's where you left it, in one of the studies.
Okay.
So, Robert, you see this kind of almost knit cloth that seems to represent a field of some kind, and very simple pieces that have been made, perhaps to represent units. You're not sure yet. You're not sure how this all works.
I had a more elaborate version, but unfortunately the Inquisitors have those things.
Ah, a tragedy. Do tell me the rules.
Alright, she will go over the basic nature of the rules. Based. All of that fun stuff. Yes, medieval risk!
Great. I love it.
All right.
Alright, Robert, make a... Oh, let's go intelligence, academics, difficulty 7. This is just for Robert.
Intelligence academics?
Mm-hmm. Because I failed to delineate military science in this game.
Okay.
Or sailing, or many other things.
Do you think wits could play a role?
Sure, absolutely.
I will do it in a wit-like manner then. Center difficulty?
7.
Set.
Do you have any specialties here?
For wits, change in plans.
I think that's
Or-
applicable here. So I'll give you 2 successes, and really what this is Elined runs you through this game, this medieval Risk, and it's obvious that she's a superior opponent. You couldn't hope to beat her, but in playing against her, you learn how to adapt to some of the changing scenarios that she puts you up against. And by the end of it, you feel like you actually have learned some of the basics of military strategy. So because of her tutelage and her time spent building this game, and your success in learning from it, you can go ahead and consider yourself to have at least 1 dot of your academics in military strategy for those purposes. You can make a note of that somewhere.
Okay.
I think at that we'll fade the scene on the two of you playing at this strategy game as Robert is slowly taught the basics of warfare. We'll transition back to Scotland. Thomas Chamberlain and Cormac de Courcy. The two of you had a somewhat more successful meeting with Prince Malcolm in your promise to hunt down the last of these Campbell cainites, although it seems like information is scarce on who exactly it might be or where, as well as this promise to join the MacDougalls in their support of King James, ending the civil war with the Black Douglases. And briefly, I'd like to hear where Cormac and Thomas's mind is at with their mission in Scotland and the developments. So we'll start with Cormac. With everything going on, where is Cormac's mind at with his perhaps newfound allies and what lies ahead?
Cormac is uncertain what MacDougal is hoping to accomplish in defeating the Black Douglases, but if it will help them get closer to him so that they can gain his support, he's more than willing to do it. He is, however, worried that this man cannot be trusted. He might have allies in England, even amongst the Covenant, that we don't know about, so he's going to play it very carefully. He's sure that Thomas has some of the same reservations, but he would not dare speak them aloud.
And likewise for Thomas, where is Thomas' mind at?
For Thomas, this is all just a different form of trade. Favors instead of trade goods, but it's the same kind of idea. He figures if you give a man something of value, he's more inclined to give back something of equal or greater value. He's of a very different mind when it comes to the potential that MacDougal might have allies in the Covenant. If that were the case, Ellen Alice would have probably not sought him out as an ally in the first place, careful as she appeared.
Right. And with these thoughts, the two of you finish packing your belongings. Gautier is left behind as you join up in the carriages preparing to leave Edinburgh. You find that it seems Camden is not coming with you, although this other MacDougall Clyde is. It's not very much explained why Camden isn't coming. But soon enough, the belongings and supplies are packed away. You see that it's not a very large force leaving Edinburgh. Maybe 300? 400? You haven't been told how many you're about to fight either. As you're packing stuff away, you see Malcolm and Clyde stepping out. Malcolm looks at the two of you. Are you ready to spill some blood? For a just cause.
Aye. Will Camden not be joining us?
No, she will not. Is that a problem?
Just curious.
Best keep your curiosity to yourself, laddie.
No offense intended. It is your house, after all.
The Campbells might have sought fit to make allies of your Yorkists, but true Scots do not idly deal with the English. It is only because of the words of Alice that I have accepted that perhaps the two of you are not just slaves to the Covenant elders.
We'll do our best to prove that true.
Or die trying.
Tom, I'd rather prefer to do both. Live and prove.
We've got about a fortnight of marching south to Langholm. We'll march during the day. Find somewhere comfortable in the carriage. And at that he turns and it looks like he's making his way into one of these carriages. They're not nearly as well appointed as the ones you're used to. There are many supplies wrapped up onto the side. Looks a bit shoddy. Definitely made more for utility than regal transport.
I think this will be the first time I won't be able to say I've slept in worse. But as long as we don't burn, it'll be.
A little discomfort is not the worst we can expect.
Alright. In time, the two of you find places in other carriages that you're able to secure yourselves away for during the day, at least. And remind me, did you bring your horses here?
I don't think that we did, if I'm honest.
I'm honestly going to say that I'd probably leave it at the McDougal estate to be taken care of.
I'm not even sure we brought them on the ship.
Didn't we, though?
I don't remember.
Cormac wouldn't leave with that bolt. I mean,
V2.
whatever this new horse's name is.
Brago?
No.
It's my horse.
Oh,
Gringolet.
that's right. I'm okay with you having brought them, and it's fine if they are remaining here at Edinburgh.
Okay.
If the horses are in Edinburgh, Tom is bringing his horse with, because...
Okay, you can do that.
Well, if Tom's bringing his, then he's bringing Gringolet too. Now you've attacked his pride.
Alright, fair enough. Both Gringolet and Brago are brought along. And the two of you secure yourselves away for the coming day and begin your travels south. And you travel. As Malcolm promised, it's travel during the day, so when you awaken each night, you find a new encampment. You end up traveling south, as he said, going to a place called Arkenholm, or at least that's the establishment, the castle you mean to attack. And over time, looking at maps, you realize it's actually very close to England, just north of Carlisle. About a week in, you've camped again, and it's a fairly cool evening. There are men here and there, campfires, tents sprawled out across this road, just off to the road. There's a heavy wood just east of you, a large forest. To the west is mostly hills. And as you're passing by, or you see that Clyde has caught your attention. He's still dressed in his plain leather armor and still has two blades sheathed. You see, he must be departing from one of these small campfires. He approaches the two of you. You two lads have been in a real battle.
Sever, Cormac says.
Most of my fighting has been done on board ship. Close quarters. No room to maneuver.
He looks back to Cormac.
I'm a soldier by necessity, not trade. But you'll see I know my way around a sword when need be.
And our kind. Have you fought ours before?
Cormac grins wolfishly. I would say I have a special talent for that.
Good. You'll need it. We are expecting them, the Black Douglases, to have a few cainites supporting them.
I'd feel cheated if there weren't.
Come join
Can't
me,
be.
Irishman. I would hear your battles. And he starts walking away toward a small campfire which is not occupied.
Can't be any worse than the lupine.
Cormac can't help but swagger towards this campfire. Now he gets a chance to tell his exploits.
He sits down on a rolled up log. The fire is low. The beast in you does take notice, and it takes you a moment to gain the composure to sit down in front of it, but it's fairly well controlled and isn't very distracting.
I do have a quick question. Have they been providing us nourishment, or are we slowly dwindling away to nothing?
You've gathered from Malcolm and Clyde more from observation than instruction. They don't seem to care whether or not you are actually told about this. That it looks like some of the camp followers, not the warriors per se, but some of the supporting individuals that have come, the people who cook meals, some of them have certainly been fed upon.
Cormac would have definitely made use of them.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, you can maintain what you were at when you left Edinburgh.
Okay. Then he stares at the fire for a little while, wondering if Clyde will have something to say before he begins.
He seems to lean forward and kind of rests his forearms on his knees, bent over a bit, waiting for you. The flicker of the light shows some of the scarring on his face, which seems to have stayed past the embrace.
Cormac will begin by telling him about some of the battles that he was involved with as a young lad in Ireland, before he ever decided to go on to Cambridge, before he was ever betrayed by his own family. But he will, at length, describe the events that happened in Dublin that led to his becoming seneschal, including the great battle and the mass embrace that they had planned to remove the rebels from the shores.
He listens. He is stoic, but you can tell he's very interested by the attention he gives you. He's not distracted by the fire or the men moving here and there, just a short distance away. You're not lying, Irishman.
I have no reason to. It would mean my own head, if I wasn't what I said I was.
You're not so barbaric as that. Maybe you go out west to the islanders. But they can be hardly called people.
Cormac chuckles at that.
You think you know vaguely of what he's speaking of. There are settlements just west on the edge of Scotland which are inhabited by Scots that, from what you've heard, are quite a bit more savage and old world than what you're used to, even compared to Scotland that you've seen.
Are they the ones I've heard of that drink the blood of their dead?
I would not put it past them. But then, I suppose I am not one to judge. None of us are.
Cannibalism and sheep fencing as well, I presume. Cormac's still chuckling, but he's amused by this Scotsman's simple view of the world, having read up on several different kinds of cultures in his time at Cambridge.
He shrugs. We treat with them when they have to, but we try as much as possible not to. What are you really doing up in Scotland? What do you really want?
Didn't Malcolm tell you?
I've heard bits and pieces, but I'd rather hear it from you.
We're seeking Scotland's support in a grand adventure. One that might see an end to the abomination that is the Covenant.
But why is that so important to you?
I could tell you my reasons, but it doesn't really matter. All you need to know is that I'm passionate about it, to the point of death. The true death.
I like to know the mind of the man I'm fighting beside. His eyes go between you and Thomas.
Sorry, I didn't realize that Thomas was invited. He specifically said Irishman.
Oh, I thought he just followed along.
Okay, well, we'll go with that, since he's being included in the question. I believe that it's the right of a man to govern his own destiny, to choose when and whom he serves.
He looks at you a bit skeptically.
Do you serve your own master out of loyalty or out of respect?
My loyalty is to my home, to the McDougalls. Malcolm leads that, so I follow Malcolm. 'Tis the way.
But it's your choice, yes?
It's not a choice, it's what you do, it's what's right.
And I believe that each of us should have the right to judge that for themselves.
What would you do if I told you there were those in England who don't respect that right? Who demand service without any hope of recompense?
I don't expect a recompense for what I do. I do it for my kin.
You do it because you are a noble man, because you choose to do it, because you judge it to be right in the world. There are those that demand it, whether or not it is in the best interest of those that they command, and whether or not it serves the best interests of their family, their clan, or their house.
Often it does not. It serves only the needs of those commanding, for whatever twisted plots they have developing. Would your Lord MacDougall ever consider you expendable?
I would not expect otherwise. I consider myself expendable if it means I'm dying for the right reason. Everyone has to die one night.
What about dying for the wrong reason?
What
Just
if
because
you...
someone tells you to?
Malcolm was of the same mind. Whatever his methods, I know what he does is for the MacDougalls, for Scotland.
No one is disputing that. However, not all princes are Malcolm MacDougall.
If I thought for even one moment that Malcolm wanted something else or threatened the MacDougalls for his own gain, I'd cut his head off. And I'd say that to his face because he'd know it, and he'd do the same to me.
And that, my friend, is why we fight. And why we need you.
Unfortunately, we have 7 heads to cut off, at the head of 7 very large serpents.
He nods a couple times. Perhaps I shouldn't envy. Or perhaps you might envy our way.
Truth be told, I do.
Cormac nods.
He starts to speak up again, but the group of you can't help but notice there's some movement over at the nearby camp. Movement of shadows across fire and creating shadows. You see that something is happening which is causing a great deal of uproar. There's sounds of yelling. There's sounds of combat.
Tom will
Yells.
draw it.
There are yells in Scott Gaelic which only Cormac understands. Wolves. Clyde rises, his sword's drawn, and he turns, and past the fires and past the camps you can see multiple large forms piercing from the darkness of the woods and clashing into these groups of men. Some of them go flying, some of them in pieces. Lupines.
Bloody hell, not again.
Clyde yells something in Scott Gaelic. You can tell Cormac he is commanding men out of their tents, up to arms. Come, we must go. Find the Malcolm. And he rushes off with swords drawn. What do you do?
Clyde, wait! We won't stand a chance! Damn it. I wish we knew how to hurt them, Thomas. I really do. It seems we can't avoid them no matter where we go.
We'll stand a damn fine better chance if we get the cainites together. And he'll lead Cormac and chase after.
Alright. You chase after. And Cormac, you following?
Oh yes, drawing his sword. For as
Okay.
little bit as it'll do.
So rushing forward, you see that many of these men are scared. Some of them are running and some of them are trying to fight, but it's not a very good scene. It looks like it's not just 3 lupines. It looks like there's some kind of group with them. Raiders of some kind, or barbarians. They're clad in leathers and pelts. They wear paintings across their face, which you can briefly see in the flash of fire. Some kind of group of marauders. Do you seek to engage all of them, or do you look for Malcolm?
I thought we were following Clyde.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're
we're
following
going.
Clyde into battle?
I'm going to seek Malcolm anyway.
No,
Alright,
I was confused. I thought he said we have to find Malcolm and then went in search of Malcolm.
Yes.
Did-
That's what I
yes.
thought.
I want to make sure
Okay.
you were going with him and not joining the battle.
Yes, that's
Okay.
true.
So you pass by this battle, which it's difficult to tell how well it's going. It doesn't seem like it's going very well. Bodies fly and screams are heard to your side as more men rush out of their tents past you. It's chaos. You hear the intermittent sounds of arrows here and there. Clyde reaches one of the larger tents, and you see that Malcolm is grabbing an axe and a shield, moving with purpose, coming out of one of these tents. He yells to some of the Scots nearby, encouraging them, rallying them. He passes by the two of you, but speaking as he does. Time to prove your mettle.
These creatures are relentless, my lord. We cannot win. Thomas and I both have fought them before.
He doesn't seem to react at all or acknowledge you. He's just moving towards the battle.
Bloody fool. But
I
he'll
mean to
follow
make-
after. Go ahead.
I need to make them pay for the sword I lost.
I suppose it's a good day to die.
Well, you did say, or die trying.
You just want to hold me to those words, don't you? As he's running off.
Rather not, actually, but he'll run as well.
All right. The group of you follow Clyde and Malcolm with this new band of soldiers meant to engage this small band of marauders accompanied by these 3 lupines. And you're going to fade there as you engage a battle. I don't want to get us committed into something and then leave or have to stop right in the middle, right as we get started.
Understandable.
So we will pick this up for the conclusion next week. And end the session.
Swell.
A little bit early, but I think better than getting in a weird position. All right. Good game. Might actually die this time. What?
Why, just why? Why do you seek to kill us all the
Because he's running the game, that's his job.
Hey, you're the ones who went out there.
Oh, thanks for that.
Aw. I'm sure it'll be fine, or everyone will die, one or the other. In any case, if my count is right, this is now the longest game I've ever run. Because I believe this is session 32, and Relicos went to 32, so once we start session next, and that'll be the longest.
And it will be the last one for Cormac and Thomas.
It's fine. I already have several characters rolled up and ready to take.
Hey, weren't you already talking about having a new character replace Cormac some odd months back?
I was just kidding. I didn't actually make anything. I like Cormac. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Alright. Let us do some entertaining role players. We will start with Cormac.
Oh, Robert, definitely, for his dangerous liaisons. Tell me about Ragnar's naked body.
I'm surprised he didn't just invade the mind of the Duke if he was...
That might be a lot harder. Riskier, I should say. But I was actually pretty entertained by that. That was pretty creative use.
Players will always do what you least expect, you know.
Well, that's why I love this game.
like died to some lupines over.
Oh no, he expected that. He planned that.
Would you believe me if I said I didn't plan it?
Then why'd you have...
What?
You planned that group getting killed by lupines.
I think what happened is that the moment you knew that my horse was there, then the lupines came into your head.
Like suddenly, drawn by the smell of horse
Again,
flesh.
I think it might just be something against horses. I mean, Robert's horse tried to run away to...
Just kind
Who
of
hurt you, Bokar? Who
fucking
hurt you?
hate these horses, so gotta get it out somehow.
Where did the horse throw you?
Robert, how about you, entertaining role player?
Wasn't long, but I really enjoyed the interaction with Elined.
I like the dichotomy of both of their actions to advance their own agendas, and it's almost like they're passing right by each other in their attempts to politic and manipulate.
and circumvent each other on accident.
Exactly. Elined, how about you?
You know what? I'm going to give it to Cormac for being the voice of reason this session.
Win. He's been encouraging me the entire time. I don't know what you're talking about.
It stands. Let it go. Thomas, how about you?
I'm also going to give it to Cormac. Good storytelling, kind of tying things back in. Really creating a nice sounding board for Clyde to hear exactly what our grievances are with the Covenant.
Absolutely. Great. All right. One experience all around. And if you guys have any questions, I'll be around throughout the week, so we'll talk.
Yep.
And
Sorry, my internet hiccuped. How much experience?
1. And then role-playing votes. So we will pick it up again next week.
Sweet.
Good game.
Cool. Good game. Good night, guys.
Right.